Hello everyone, my name is Christina Braun and I'm going to be sharing with you my action research project that I created for EDU 603 for Gwynedd Mercy University. The title of my action research project is Practicing Mindfulness with Special Education Students and its Effects on Testing. First, let me just explain a few reasons why I chose this as my study. As an educator, I have seen the increase in testing in our schools today. Some of the students I work with take multiple tests a week, sometimes even multiple tests a day. With this increase in testing has come an increase in test anxiety. Seeing students on a daily basis experience stress and anxiety caused me to start to brainstorm ideas of how I can help students deal with these emotions. An uprising trend in education is practicing mindfulness. The purpose of my study was to see if practicing mindfulness with students would help them deal with test anxiety. For those of you that are not aware of what mindfulness practices are, they are activities that allow one to be mindful of their feelings and emotions without judgment. Mindfulness activities are a way for individuals to be present in the moment and get rid of outside distractors. Examples of mindfulness activities include yoga postures, breathing techniques, visualizations, or meditation. Before starting my action research project, I reviewed several different studies on mindfulness. Amongst the literature were several common themes. The first common theme was that mindfulness activities improve executive functioning. Executive functions are needed to help students regulate their behaviors. The second theme was that mindfulness activities can improve academic achievement. They can improve academic achievement by allowing students to be able to focus more on the task at hand or the information they are being taught. The third theme was that mindfulness activities improve the emotional well-being of students. Mindfulness activities teach students how to cope with their feelings and deal with them in a positive way, such as breathing techniques or visualizations. The fourth theme in the literature was that mindfulness activities can be used inside or outside of the classroom. Mindfulness practices are intended to be utilized throughout one's life and with any stressor they may encounter. The last theme across the literature was that mindfulness activities are extremely practical and feasible. They do not require the purchase of many materials, if any, and they also do not take very long to complete. Now I will go into detail about my research study and the participants, procedures, and lastly the results. The research design I chose for my study was a qualitative case study. I chose this design because I was primarily focused with getting an in-depth look into how the students felt in regards to practicing mindfulness. Because I wanted to get an in-depth look, I only chose 5 participants that were 5th grade students. All of the participants received special education services. This was not a random sample, and these students were chosen because they were in my small group for PSSA testing. The group consisted of 3 girls and 2 boys, ranging in age from 9 to 11. All of the participants have a specific learning disability in reading, while 2 of the participants had a specific learning disability in both reading and math. 3 of the 5 students are diagnosed with ADHD, of which no medication is taken, and the demographics of my participants included 1 African American student and 1 Caucasian student. In order to collect my data, I used various tools. The tools I used included observations, questionnaires, and an interview. My observations occurred in the natural school setting while the students were taking the 5 separate sections of the PSSA. Signs of stress, anxiety, or lack of focus from the participants were looked for during the observations, and also if the students utilized any mindfulness activities while taking the test. Data was also collected through 2 questionnaires, the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire and a self-made questionnaire. The 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire was used to assess each participant's state of mindfulness prior to practicing mindfulness. The self-made questionnaire was focused on asking students if they experienced stress or anxiety during the test, what caused the stress or anxiety, what they did to combat these emotions, and if mindfulness activities helped them at all. The last method of data collection was through facilitating a small focus group. The focus group was also focused towards asking students about their feelings towards mindfulness and test taking. My procedures for collecting data are as follows. On the first day of the test, prior to practicing any mindfulness activities, the participants were given the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire to complete on their own. At the beginning of each testing session, the students were led through different mindfulness activities from a Yoga for Classrooms card deck. Every day while the students were taking the PSSA, only observations occurred. Once all the students were finished, other methods of data collection occurred. After completing the test on the 3rd day, students completed the self-made questionnaire. On the last day, the students participated in the focus group titled A Conversation About Mindfulness and Taking the PSSA. The data was analyzed by noting the frequency of behaviors of stress, anxiety, off-task behavior, and a use of mindfulness activities during the observations. From analyzing this data, results showed that students who practiced mindfulness activities during the test had fewer signs of stress, anxiety, and off-task behaviors. From the questionnaires and focus groups, students' responses were coded into common themes. After coding the student responses, the common theme was that students found the mindfulness activities to be beneficial to them during the test. 4 of the students felt that the mindfulness activities helped them, while 1 of the students felt that the mindfulness activities stressed them out more. All 5 of the students said they experienced stress or anxiety during the test. Some students said it was caused by problems being too hard, while others said it was because they were afraid to fail. The 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire was analyzed according to the scoring instructions. After scoring each of the participants' questionnaire, all participants had a relatively low score of mindfulness, averaging a score of 61% out of a 100% score. After analyzing the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire, it became clear that participants did not have a very high state of mindfulness. This shows a need for mindfulness activities to be implemented on a daily basis to increase the state of mindfulness amongst students. When students' states of mindfulness are high, they are better able to cope with stress or anxiety so that this does not hinder academic performance. The research shows that there is a correlation between mindfulness and a reduction in stress, anxiety, and off-task behavior. If mindfulness activities are practiced, students are able to deal with stress or anxiety and stay on task. The research also showed that the majority of the participants thought the activities helped them and they would continue to use them. One thing that was surprising from the research was that after all the students completed a conversation about mindfulness and taking the PSSA, which was the focus group, they were very open with each other and continued to share personal issues with one another. The students discussed living situations, issues with their siblings, problems with their parents, or struggles that they had at school. The students felt safe and comfortable in this environment and sincerely cared for each other's problems. The mindfulness activities allowed these students to have a common activity with one another, setting the foundation for building relationships and a sense of community. One of the limitations of my research design was that I had a low number of participants because it was a case study design. This means my conclusions cannot be generalized to a larger population. Another limitation of the study was the amount of time available to collect data. I could only collect data after all the students had finished taking the PSSA. I did not have as much time as originally planned to collect data, and therefore did not get the desired amount of data I wanted to collect. Another limitation was student absences. If a student was absent, I could not collect data from them that day. Lastly, a limitation was that the participants all have a reading disability. The questionnaires were not read to them, and this could have limited their responses because they may have not been able to read or understand what was being asked. In conclusion, my research study looked in-depthly at the experiences of 5 students while they were taking the PSSA. Mindfulness was practiced with these students to see if it would help them deal with the test anxiety that comes from taking a high-stakes test. The research showed mindfulness to have a positive effect on helping students combat these negative emotions that can interfere with task performance. I urge all teachers to consider implementing mindfulness in their classrooms, as not only can it help with testing, but it can also improve the overall well-being of the students in your class. Thank you very much for listening to my action research project.